Alrighty everyone, welcome back. It is now April 18th of 2025, and we just have a couple of more months to go until Fantastic Four, The First Steps drops in theaters. We already know that there's a lot of criticism surrounding this film for multiple reasons out there, for valid reasons that a lot of people are actually really analyzing deeply at this point. We know that ever since the latest trailer dropped, there's a lot of criticism surrounding the female iteration of Silver Surfer in this film. One thing that a lot of people have been pointing out is the CGI, and how the CGI is completely downgraded in comparison to, for example, the rise of the Silver Surfer back in 2007. Even though that was a very bad film in isolation, the CGI for Silver Surfer definitely outperforms what we have actually seen in that trailer. That, of course, is by Disney/Marvel. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future updates. You can also follow me at Mike01. I thank you all so very much for the great and kind support. So, Pedro Pascal, we know that he can get very defensive sometimes. We know that he also, tends to call out critics, tends to call out those that are being very much, engaged in criticism or pointing things out there that are either controversial for a specific film or anything to do with an actual plot or storyline within the story. Now, what's interesting about this has a lot more to do with what's been going on with Fantastic Four First Steps. We already know that this movie has quite a bit of problems going on for it right now. We know that they did have to cut back on some of the funds going into this movie when it came to the animation and when it came to the animators working on this film, which may very well have a lot to do with the reason why Silver Surfer, Shalabal, alright, an iteration of the character, well, not necessarily just an iteration, but it's a totally different character, let's just put it at that. But let's get on to Pedro Pascal, alright? Now, with the Fantastic Four First Steps going under reshoots currently in the midst of the release of the newest trailer by Marvel/Disney, one major development now involves more to do with both the female Silver Surfer criticism and Pedro Pascal sharing his growing issues with the fan outrage. Now, Pedro delivered the following in an attempt to tame fans and the growing outrage. I think there are times when criticism is just that, criticism, and then there are times when critics are trying to put others down, and it's offensive behavior coming from especially Marvel fans. What we are aiming to do with some of these characters is that we wanted to look into the source material that did not get the recognition that it deserved back then, and so we decided to do just that with the characters like the Silver Surfer. Obviously, there is more to her story, but the criticism surrounding her is just overblown and out of touch and unfair, and I think it just sheds light on the issues that we have with multiple fandoms out there, including Marvel. You don't always need a male character as the dominant role for a character that is so embedded in pop culture, nor do you need to always follow the popular source material. What we are following are pages from the comics that aren't so well known, that didn't really get the recognition. And you see a lot of women, but the fans need to detach themselves from the traditional Silver Surfer that they enjoy, because there is more to her story than you know. Fans are just being unfair, and I think there are many fans out there that don't really sound educated in all of this. If you have a problem with a female iteration of a Silver Surfer character, then that's a problem on you. I suggest proper research should be done with the comics, and you will learn that there is a very different character that mimics the Silver Surfer. We wanted to go with that one because the importance of female roles, especially in Marvel, is something very important to Kevin, he's talking about Kevin Feige, and important to everyone else that worked on this film. Fans need to stop criticizing and need to start reading. There is more to know in the comics. If you don't like these new versions of Reed Richards, Sue Storm, Johnny Storm, and now the prominent form of the Silver Surfer being played by a woman, I think, and I really don't know what else to say other than to start reading the comics, and your arguments will appear very outlandish. So, let me just stop there. What he's alluding to is, for example here, and this is a common misconception, a lot of people believe that the female iteration in this movie, alright, this female Silver Surfer, is just a complete total swap, or gender swap, so to speak, of Norrin Radd. But what's really happening is that there's this minor character, not necessarily minor, but it's a character that wasn't heavily explored in the comics, wasn't really all that, prominent in the comics way back when. She was only in, a handful of issues, a handful of series out there. When you look at the ratio, you have Norrin Radd, who is the one that you saw in the previous Fantastic Four movies from the early 2000s into the late 2000s. We know that there's a lot of things going on where now they're exploring this other character, alright, that knows Norrin Radd, right? The love interest of Norrin Radd. You have Shalabal, alright? That's who Julia Garner is playing in this movie. But my argument is this. Marvel/Disney, they should have known that this would create a lot of outrage. They should have known that this would have created a lot of problems down the road from the fandom, from actual dedicated fans that have actually been waiting for a Fantastic Four film to arrive for years upon years that would be done correctly, because we all know what happened with Fan 4 Stick, as many like to call it, back in 2016 or 2015, whatever it was. That was a terrible film. And if you look at the 2007 and the 2005 versions, look, you know, they're fun movies, they're popcorn flicks, but you really can't consider them really good movies at all. Let's just be clear about that. But, so, a lot of people are investing their time really waiting on this to be the main focus of Norrin Radd. And in isolation here, you're getting Shalabal instead. Disney should have known that this would have created a lot of fan outrage, because a lot of people are heavy fans of Norrin Radd. In fact, there's a lot of Fantastic Four fans, and I mean a lot of them, that are fans of that overall comic, or that overall, you know, series, if you will, because of the Silver Surfer. And so you're going to lose a lot of those fans. Alright, a lot of fans right now are realizing that they're not getting Norrin Radd in this film, but I have a little thing to talk about that in a second that I think is really going to raise an eyebrow. So Pedro goes on to close. That's just the hard truth of everything. Julia did an outstanding job, and the design of her character, I feel, is unfairly being criticized. Everyone needs to stop nitpicking at such minor details, you know? This is a film that focuses on how we could tweak characters like Sue Storm or Johnny in this new era. You are not going to get the same Johnny you are used to. This is a Johnny from modern cinema that best fits moviegoers. The criticism surrounding the Silver Surfer, all I have to say again is that I think it's a concerning case of the division that we are dealing with right now everywhere, if you know what I mean. So obviously Pedro is getting semi-political there again, or at least he's trying to, from what it sounds like. But again, let me just focus on that real quick. So back to Silver Surfer. The thing about this is that they did actually film a small amount of footage of Norrin Radd for the Silver Surfer, but there were a lot of arguments between, you know, Disney executives on whether or not they wanted to scrub that footage and get rid of that footage and lock it up in the vault to not have Norrin Radd show up in the Fantastic Four. So whether he shows or not, based on whether or not they want to push the footage in there and kind of tweak it with the reshoots that they're doing right now, regardless, even if Norrin Radd shows up, it's going to be a very glorified cameo in comparison to the main role of Shalabal. And a lot of people have a problem with that even as well. And that's the main thing, that's the main argument, is that Disney/Marvel should have known that when you look at the ratio, when people think of the Silver Surfer in general, they think of Norrin Radd. They don't really think about Shalabal, right? Now, that's the interesting aspect of things here, is that we know that Pedro's getting much defensive against the critics. He's beginning to stand up against the criticism. I think you're going to see more about this in the coming months, but I would like to hear what you all have to say about all of this below in the comments. And if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys later.